college football, there are good days and there are bad days. Penn State's defense had a pretty good day, and the offense was pretty bad. Ohio State beats Penn State 20-12 here at Ohio Stadium, the place that has been a house of horrors for Penn State football in any era, but the James Franklin era has certainly been no exception to that. Tom Bradley, interim head coach in 2011, is still the most recent coach to win in Columbus, which is crazy to think about, and continues. This just continues to be a problem. Joe Smeltzer from Disney Sports Now joined alongside Jarrod Prugar, and Jarrod, we thought that this was it. We thought that this was going to be the Penn State team to get over that hump, beat Ohio State, go into Michigan against Michigan undefeated, set up a showdown at Beaver Stadium. That is still going to be a very important football game, provided that Penn State beats Indiana and Maryland. But man, Penn State would have loved to go into that matchup undefeated, and that's not going to happen.
Yeah, we want to talk about Penn State's defense, and they were pretty good. But Ohio State's defense was pretty good as well. Offensively they struggled. Play calling was suspect, and there'll be more to come on that on esportsnow.com. But it's just one of those situations where the better team won, and the better team was Ohio State. On paper, this was probably Penn State's best chance to win in Columbus in quite some time. But the way the cookie crumbled, that wasn't the case. Whether it was a holding call or pass interference or what have you, it just didn't end up coming to fruition. Drew Aller did not have a great day by any means, but at the same time, Penn State doesn't have a Marvin Harrison Jr. Ohio State does, and as much as Penn State wanted to thwart him and control what he did, he still made up 56% of their passing yards and receiving yards. So that's kudos to Ohio State and the Buckeyes. They won the game, and Penn State now has to go back to the drawing board and figure out an offensive identity.
Absolutely. Drew Aller finished the night with less than 200 yards, 191 yards, and he threw 43 passes. So that kind of tells you all you need to know about how that went. Drew Aller bluntly assessed himself. First off, I haven't been on the Penn State beat long. This is only my second full season. I started in early November of 2021, so I'm definitely not a sports reporter that's seen it all the way some guys on this beat have, but I've never seen a Penn State player as visibly despondent as Drew Aller was after that game, and it's very obvious why. This is an Ohio kid, grew up going to this stadium, loving the team he was playing against today, didn't get offered by Ohio State until he was already committed to Penn State, and he had a big chance to really ball out and kind of put his stamp on the national stage, and that just didn't happen. And going back to before the game, I'm happy that I put this out there because I can go back and say that I made a pretty what proved to be an accurate statement. I said that the only way that Penn State would lose to this Ohio State team is if the offense started slow, which we've seen a few times, saw it in both road games before this one, Illinois and Northwestern. I felt that the only way that Penn State would lose is if the offense started slow, and then unlike those Illinois and Northwestern games, just not come out of it in the second half, and that's pretty much exactly what happened. I think it's pretty fair to say that an average, forget great, forget even good, an average offensive performance probably wins this football game.
Yeah, both teams defensively played super well, like I said. But for Penn State, Coach Franklin mentioned it, they played a lot of cover zero, and the type of separation that we saw from Penn State receivers and Ohio State defensive backs was very similar to how close I am to you. There was no separation whatsoever, and that's the issue. Like I said, Marvin Harrison Jr. is a great player. I honestly think he's probably one of the best, if not the best, in college football after his performance today. But Penn State doesn't have that. They don't have that. They have DeAndre Lambert-Smith, they have Trey Wallace, and Theo Johnson as a tight end, but they didn't get much out of them today. And you see that. Of course, this game means something to Drew Aller, it means something to everybody in there. We were just in the press room for interviews, and they were all distraught. And this game means something. This game is a big thing for everybody on this program. As much as Coach Franklin wants to downplay that, this game does matter. This game is bigger than the rest. Now they get to still salvage their season, but they've got Indiana coming up next. Then they've got Michigan, and they've got to be able, Maryland before that, but they've got to be able to not let this spiral. Because this offense, they need to figure themselves out. They ran the ball rather well early, but then they abandoned it and tried to force the ball downfield where there was no separation, and that ultimately cost them in this one.
Yeah, you mentioned the receivers, Jarrod. Not too long ago, Penn State had a guy that wasn't quite at Marvin Harrison's level. I mean, Marvin Harrison's a top 3 NFL draft pick. There aren't many receivers or players at any position that can do what this guy can do. But Jahan Dotson was a money receiver, a clear number 1 receiver. And of course, in the 2 years where Jahan Dotson was the number 1 guy for Penn State, they combined to go 11-11. Now, Penn State has a much better team, but you have Keandre Lambert-Smith, who is good. I don't know if he's a bona fide number 1 the way Jahan Dotson was. And then behind KLS, I don't know. We thought Trey Wallace, getting Trey Wallace back would help in a big way. Didn't do that today. Dante Cephas, Malik McLean, I don't know. It's really kind of a who's who of who's that in this Penn State receivers room behind KLS.
Yeah, exactly. And they really didn't get anything going offensively until the final drive of the game for Penn State. So, and that resulted in Caden Saunders finding the end zone. And that's more or less, a garbage time touchdown. Nothing to take away from scoring. Obviously, that was a premium today. But, again, they've got to figure out who to get the ball, who their playmaker is. But and if it's not one of the receivers, then they need to figure out a way to get Tyler Warren and Theo Johnson and Singleton and Katron Allen into the game, in the receiving game. And they tried at times, but either a drop here or a drop there, and it really limited what they were able to do offensively.
Do you feel like Penn State has any chance to win the Big Ten now?
Well, they're not in control.
No, not at all.
This Penn State or this Ohio State defense is really good. We remain to see if Michigan can be tested. They're going through a lot of stuff up there in Ann Arbor, but they still play these guys at the end of the year. So and Penn State still has to beat Michigan. As of right now, I don't see Penn State beating Michigan. I see another 10-2 team, unless this offense gets it figured out. But I would say no right now. The Big Ten is out of the question, but that doesn't mean they can't still go to a really good bowl game.
Right, well, we don't want to give away too much more because Jarrod and I are both on the Lashing Out podcast, which we'll be recording tomorrow, and there will be some talking going on, and we also have our print talking going on Mini Sports Now, plus the tweets and all that good stuff. So we'll cut this short, but we'll have a lot more on NSN with the Lashing Out podcast and with myself and Jarrod's writing as well. Jarrod's going to have his weekly Free and Out. I'll have my thoughts. You can watch James Franklin's press conference, which we already have on our YouTube site, and hear from the players as well. But we got Indiana next week. Should be a win for Penn State. Indiana definitely isn't Ohio State, and definitely isn't, well, they aren't very good. But until then, Jarrod Prugar, this is Joe Smeltzer. This has been Penn State, Ohio State, and another disappointing outing in Columbus.